our State House studio in Montgomery. I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. Today was the 23rd day of the legislative session, and a long day. The Senate just adjourned a few hours ago. Long days are typical toward the end of a legislative session, when lawmakers are eager to see their bills make it to the finish line before time runs out. We also tend to see more filibusters toward the end, and that was the case today on the Senate floor. Senate Democrats objected to Republicans' ESG legislation. That stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance, a recent movement in which Republicans claim big corporations or mutual funds are pressured into adopting progressive policies, like climate change policies, that aren't necessarily profitable. Senate Bill 261 from State Senator Dan Roberts aims to push back by prohibiting the state or local governments from contracting with companies that boycott other companies due to political reasons. Democrats argued that the legislation would harm Alabama's business environment and that the force of government would only do more harm.
The sub was cleaning up some language that we worked very carefully with lots of interested parties from around the state to get it to a point where they were agreeable with this moving forward as it is. The purpose of what we're trying to do is we have industries in our state that can be adversely affected by things that are going on nationally, and we are trying to, really what we said before, we've worked the last 3 years very diligently on making our companies competitive in our state. We did that through the Alabama Business Competitive Act in 2021. We're trying to put us in a position so that they can thrive. Think how important the automotive manufacturing industry is here, steel, particularly where Senator Smittermeyer are from, the iron industry and steel in particular. Think of agriculture around the state. Think of the timber industry. Think of the shipbuilding. Think of the coal mining that goes on in our state. That's high met quality, the ability to work with that. And then all the other ancillary industries around the state and how important those industries are. And we are trying to make sure that they have access to the mother's milk, if you will, of capital moving forward. So that's the purpose of what we're trying to do in this bill, and we're specifically trying to address corporate boycott issues and contracts in this legislation.
This is an amendment that's coming from the Finance Department that they want security based on what they're doing. They wanted to make sure that the Finance Department, who does contracts all the time with people all the time, that the Finance Department would not be hurt from doing contracts, so they did not fall under this, because the Finance Department does contracts all of the time. We do contracts through contract review, which is contracts with the state. We should not be subjected to that.
After hours of debate and multiple changes to the bill, making it more workable for the business community, the bill passed along party lines 27-8. It now goes to the House. The Senate also took up legislation on the acquisition of land by foreign entities. As originally written, House Bill 379 from State Representative Scott Stadthagen would have barred Chinese citizens, entities, and their government from purchasing land in Alabama. After concerns were raised over its implications, the bill was significantly revised to reduce the scope of the bill, but to expand the countries of concern to include Iran, Russia, and North Korea.
This is the amendment that we were just talking about that protects the companies that we have in the state, like GE in North and Huntsville. We have Golden Dragon down in Wilcox, and I think we have one in the Mobile area. Continental, that was purchased by a China subsidiary company. And those companies, with this amendment, will still be able to stay in this country and be able to purchase land to be able to expand their footprint if necessary.
Yes, sir, they can expand.
This will also protect students who are at universities. We're not putting them out of the country. We're not dealing with
doctors
and lawyers, other professions that live here that may be of China descent, as we started out.
Exactly.
They can own property and without having to give up any of their property.
Right.
those people who were born in this country are United States citizens, so they had no fear of this anyway.
That's right.
They could own property, but even with that, some of them had the fear.
They did.
Okay? So I just want to make sure that they understand that if you were born citizen of the United States, you're no different than any other United States born citizen. You have all rights to reserve that everyone else has as a born United States citizen.
We need to make it clear that we are not targeting any individual that's here legally. Only people we're targeting are these government and government entities that are adversaries of the United States.
Yes, because we have seen where governments have come in and bought property and probably now on that list, but they own property in the United States. A lot of our ports are owned by foreign countries today.
That bill passed 26-7 and now goes back to the House. Let's take a look at other legislation that passed the Senate today. Senate Bill 299 from Senator Arthur Orr would place sunset provisions or expiration dates on certain economic development incentives that don't currently have them. That bill now goes to the House. Senate Bill 298 from Senator Andrew Jones establishes the Sweet Trails Alabama Project Fund, which is the first step in creating a statewide master plan for greenway trails. It goes to the House. And House Bill 254 from State Representative Steve Klaus, which requires any new local motor fuels tax to be spent on roads and bridges. There was a technical amendment added to the bill, so it will now go back to the House. Down in the House, lawmakers debated the issue of contraband in Alabama prisons. Senate Bill 120 from State Senator Linda Coleman Madison would allow prisons to better define contraband so they can stop dangerous materials from being smuggled behind bars. It also provides for penalties for contraband violations, both inside and outside of prison. State Representative Tim Wadsworth carried the bill in the House.
If you have a juvenile detention center or a detention facility, if someone brings contraband in, they don't have the authority to find what contraband is. If you have people bringing in phones, anything that shouldn't be in a facility, they cannot charge those individuals. What this does is it adds detention facility and juvenile facilities and give them the same authority as DOC and also county jails to find, contribute, and charge somebody who brings the illegal drugs or any other substance into the facility.
The bill passed 98-3, then went back to the Senate, which concurred with the House changes, and now that bill goes to the governor. Here are some other notable bills that passed the House today. House Bill 465 from State Representative Rex Reynolds establishes the Opioid Treatment and Abatement Fund. This is the fund that will allocate money the state received from drug companies as a part of the opioid settlement reached by Attorney General Steve Marshall. It passed unanimously and goes to the Senate. House Bill 117 from State Representative Danny Garrett would increase the amount of taxable retirement income is eligible to be exempt from $6,000 to $10,000. It passed unanimously and goes to the Senate. House Bill 399 from State Representative Chris Pringle would change the 2024 primary election dates so that the primary runoff would be 6 weeks after the primary instead of 4. Without the change, the runoff would occur the week of Easter. The bill passed 91-11 and goes to the Senate. And Senate Bill 154 from State Senator Will Barfoot would limit how quickly the state could rescind someone's driver's license for non-moving violations. We've talked a lot about this bill. It passed the House 87-14, then went back to the Senate for a unanimous concurrence vote, and now it goes to the governor. The House also played host to a joint legislative session today for the annual Law Enforcement Medal of Honor ceremony. The late Bibb County Sheriff's Deputy Brad Johnson, along with his partner Deputy Chris Poole, were awarded the medal for their extraordinary courage in the line of duty.
We recognize Deputy Brad Johnson and Deputy Chris Poole as recipients of the 2023 Alabama Legislative Medal of Honor for Law Enforcement, Alabama's highest law enforcement award for extraordinary courage in the line of duty. And whereas on June 29, 2022, Deputy Chris Poole initiated the pursuit of a vehicle that was reported stolen in Calera and driven by a 26-year-old felon who had been arrested on 46 criminal charges since the age of 17. At periods during the pursuit, speeds exceeded 100 miles per hour. And whereas the driver lost control of the vehicle and began firing gunshots toward Deputy Poole, who reported on his radio that he had been shot, and urged Deputy Johnson, who had joined the pursuit, to back off because of the continuing gunfire. And whereas Deputy Johnson, who was determined to provide support for Deputy Poole, arrived at the scene, began firing, and placed 2 shots through the windshield as Deputy Johnson stepped onto the side rail of his Sheriff's Department car, he successfully fired 2 additional rounds before sustaining a gunshot wound as well. Both deputies were transported by police escort to UAB Hospital in Birmingham, where Poole was treated and released. Johnson was placed on life support, from which he was removed the following day. And whereas Deputy Brad Johnson was pronounced dead shortly after 3:15 p.m. on June 30th, 2022. And whereas for his bravery on June 29th, 2022, and for the events that followed, Deputy Brad Johnson is highly honored and deserving of the 2023 Legislative Medal of Honor.
Finally, lawmakers throughout the State House were shocked and saddened today to learn of the sudden death of Harry Reeder, the head pastor of Brookwood Presbyterian Church in Birmingham. According to AL.com, Reeder was killed in an accident in which his car crashed into the back of a dump truck. The pastor had been here in Montgomery this morning and helped lead a legislative prayer breakfast. He was 75. We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal Podcasts.
Joining me next is State Representative Scott Stadthagen, Majority Leader for the Alabama House of Representatives. Mr. Leader, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
We have a lot to talk about, lots of issues going on, but we'd be remiss if we didn't stop and acknowledge the tragedy today. Pastor Harry Reeder, who was just here in the State House today, was tragically killed in an auto accident. He's a pastor and a close friend of Senator Roberts, and our thoughts go out to his family.
Absolutely. He did the morning prayer this morning at ALCAP and had a really good message for everybody, and just devastating news. And our thoughts and prayers go out to his and his family, and definitely Senator Roberts, and he was really close to him as well.
Right. I mean, Senator Roberts was carrying his bill there on the Senate floor and got the tragic news. So all he's been through, and certainly we're thinking about Senator Roberts and everybody involved. Here we are. We've got 7 days left. You did days, 10, 9, 8 this week. So it's really getting towards the home stretch. From your vantage point as Majority Leader, are you pleased with the progress so far? Are you pleased with where the session is?
Absolutely. And with our leadership, from the Majority Leader's office, Speaker's office, Rules Chair, so the General Fund Chairman, we've got so much new leadership, and everybody was kind of question mark of what session's going to be like with all the new leadership. And to say the job that we've done so far, I'm extremely proud of it. I don't know when we have went through so many calendars and successfully went through calendars. And that's to our leadership and us working together as a team. And at this point of session, I'm extremely pleased and happy with our progress.
Have you enjoyed the role? I mean, it's kind of like the dog catching the car. You ran for it, you got it. Well, now you got to do the job. So have you enjoyed? It's got to be a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. I'm a public servant. Like, I love helping people and doing things for people. And in this role, that's what I get to do for the members. And if whatever they need, I'm there, and I get to give them all my efforts. The bad part for Scott is I put the members above myself sometimes, so I get neglected a little bit as a politician, but that's okay. I mean, that's what I signed up for.
That's the role, right?
That's the role.
Well, let's get into legislation. You had a bill that it had already passed the House, but it actually passed the Senate today. This is the China land bill. It's kind of nicknamed that. This has to do with the Chinese government, Chinese entities, and at least originally Chinese individuals from purchasing land in Alabama. Describe this bill and kind of tell us why you brought it in the first place.
Yeah, so the purpose of this bill is Homeland Security. China has purchased over $6 billion of property in the last fiscal year in the United States. Currently, 1.8 million acres of Alabama's property is owned by foreign countries. So that was the number one concern of mine and why I brought the legislation. It's basically, we've got military bases throughout our whole entire state. We've got a lot of critical infrastructure throughout our state, and that was the sole purpose of this bill, is for protection of our citizens and our state.
Mm-hmm. And so after House passage, it went upstairs, and it had some significant revisions in the Senate. Were you a part of those conversations with Senator Sessions?
I was.
So what does the bill look like now?
Yeah, so currently it just passed the Senate, and we've got agricultural land, land within a 10-mile radius of any military installations, and then any critical infrastructure properties within our state cannot be purchased by, and we actually added China, North Korea, Russia, Iran, and then also if you're on a naughty list with the Homeland Security, you cannot purchase land either.
Mm-hmm. Well, because there were some concerns that it was targeting just Chinese, and there was lessons in the Chinese community, the Chinese American community thought, well, it's just targeting us. So right now it's not just China, it's these nations of concern.
Correct.
Is that what you
absolutely?
Okay.
Yeah, and it was really based on the Chinese government, not a individual person who's over here living the American dream. It was the intent of it was for a communist government trying to take over and do us harm.
Sure. Well, do you feel like it's a better bill and it'll take care of some of those concerns? I remember there was some concern about what if an existing Chinese company that's here in Alabama, we have several of them, can they grow? Can they expand? Did the amendment touch that part of it at all?
It did, and it protects them. And that's not the intent of anybody in the legislature, is to hurt our economics of our state. We've got good companies that are very profitable, and they have a lot of employees, and we want them to continue to be successful in our state. But we did address that. We made sure that was not going to harm them in any way.
Mm-hmm. So I guess it comes back downstairs because it was amended. What's the timeline look like?
I'm assuming next week we'll pull it out of the basket and concur, and hopefully the governor will sign it.
Well, speaking of timing, there's a lot left to do. The education budget comes to the House. The general fund goes to the Senate. But talking with Chairman Garrett, are we looking at next week for the education budget to move in the House?
My understanding is both chambers are going to address the budgets and be done with them next week, hopefully.
Has there been conversation in the caucus about any changes? I know that the supplemental was kind of the controversial one, because all that sort of extra money, when you have a lot of money available, a lot of people are going to try to get at it. Has there been conversation in caucus about possible changes to that, or you think it might remain about the same as it passed the Senate?
There's been conversations, but Chairman Garrett has not addressed the caucus yet. We've been kind of putting it on hold a little bit, and this week we're going to start addressing it. So those conversations have started, but nothing that we can talk out loud with.
I understand. I can't just come to your caucus meeting?
You can, but you have to leave after the meal.
Right. I see this session is really interesting. Like you said, new leadership, so many people in new leadership roles. And so just watching it from my vantage point, there's been a lot of filibustering. It's not like the Senate where you can really shut down the day, but Democrats, the minority can use the rules, the tactics to really drag things out. And obviously for the majority, y'all are trying to get through a calendar of bills and actually do these things. So that getting drug out, it's got to be frustrating. So I was curious, in your role and your colleagues, at what point does it become okay? We've got to shut this down. We've got to have a cloture petition to shut off debate. Is there a breaking point that y'all have that is just sort of an internal conversation?
It's an internal conversation, and we try to be as respectful and mindful of everybody in the chambers at all times. Leader Daniels and I, we have a phenomenal working relationship, and we communicate a lot. And you'll see us on the floor communicating a lot, especially during different filibusterings or different debates. And we always try to be mindful of every member, but there does come a point of debate and filibustering where it's time up, and we need to move on and continue to do good work for the people of Alabama. So sometimes that does take place.
Yeah, I was noticing so that little moment. I guess it was last week when the speaker had to gavel, and Mr. Bracy, and a little discussion there, and what it looked like, because that was one of those days where it was just a lot of filibustering, and so it was over this whole stay germane to the topic. And so it seemed to me, I was curious if these long days, drug out calendars, sort of in y'all's caucus saying, okay, we need to really use our rules to keep everything on point, including the germane thing, including cloture petitions and things like that. I guess my question is, has there been frustration about the length of the days?
Sometimes it is frustrating, but it's also, you got to be mindful of the person. Sometimes they are there for a reason, and they're speaking from the heart for a reason. But the speaker is very adamant about staying on task of business and being germane to the bill at hand, and I think that's very important. We're not there to waste time. We're there to conduct the business of the people, and just like with this China bill, we had good debate, and we had really good concerns with different industries, and we addressed those concerns. And that's what good legislation, as the sausage being made, is supposed to look like. It's not just stalling and wasting people's time, because we need to be doing the people's work and just not wasting time down there.
Well, switching gears, it was a few weeks ago, but you are sort of the mastermind behind the legislative baseball game. One of them, and it was a really good time. We were there. We had a lot of footage and everything, including Senator Orr's collision at first base. But talk about just sort of how this came about as an idea, and it seems to have really taken off.
It has. So me and Senator Gudger, it was 2 years ago, we're kind of sitting around. We are roommates in our loft. We have a loft together, and we're talking about something we can do to give back to our state. And one thing led to another, and we talked about a softball game. Well, we've got a beautiful stadium in Montgomery. Why not try to? And one thing led to another, and literally that's how it started. And the first year went very well. I think it surprised a lot of people. We did for the Big Oak Ranch, and Brody Kroll came down, and some of the kids came down, and it was a touching moment for all of us. I think it really, and the crazy thing is, after that game, the Senate and the House, before, were kind of at each other's neck. We're late in the session, and then after the game, we're all cutting up, we're having fun, and we needed that. And that's kind of
blow off steam a little bit.
It's a blow off steam kind of, and it reminds us of why we're truly down here. And sometimes tensions can get hot, and we can be so focused on things and let our hair down and just kind of do something fun for a good cause. And hopefully we continue it every year.
Yeah.
But hopefully we win next year, because I'm tired of losing.
Yeah, 0-2.
0-2 in the House
against the Senate. And you're right. Those relationships are key, because, like you said, late in the session, it's how many House bills have the Senate passed, how many Senate bills have the House passed, which is just sort of this inside baseball. But it really matters.
It does.
It really matters to people. So to have those relationships really can be key to things not just going off the rails, right?
That's right. Absolutely. And it's bipartisan. I mean, you've got Republicans, Democrats, House members, senators cutting up and, putting your guard down for a little bit, just having fun.
I think that's a good idea that it's the House versus the Senate, even though y'all have more members. But like, so up in D.C., in the congressional baseball game, it's Republicans versus Democrats, and it just, I don't know. I just think
like
that's
that.
kind of a bad feel. Yeah,
That's right.
yeah, and then the staffs get really into it, and then on the softball side, it's the female members of Congress versus the female reporters versus the press.
Okay.
So
we might need to look at something else now.
Well, yeah. So next year we need to involve the press some. We can play some kind of role. But we were, of course, happy to be there and record it all. It's nice to have some enrichment, not just for the members, for the staff, for everybody in this sort of state house community. So
I agree.
A good cause. Well, Mr. Leader, thanks again for coming on the show, and we'll see you down the stretch.
Awesome. Thank you, Ty, for having me.
You bet. We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow night at 7:30 for our Week in Review show. You'll be right here on Alabama Public Television. For our Capitol Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.